Andrew, thank you so much for your time this morning. Much appreciated.
Good to be with you.
Let's talk first of all about a story that is suggesting that the Tories are bankrupt, and actually it's going to be very difficult for you to fund a long leadership race because you're in this limbo period where if you don't have a leader, then you can't get in the donations. You've obviously spent a lot of money in the election. There's not much in the war chest. Does this mean that it should be a shorter leadership race or a longer one? What's your view?
Well, I think the most important thing is that we get it right. We've got a job to do immediately to oppose this government. That's why we've now got a full shadow cabinet formed. You can see Rachel Reeves is out touring the studios this morning, denying the state of the strong public finances that we've left and rolling the pitch to break Labour's promise not to put up taxes. So there's a job of work that needs to be done right now, and we are out there doing it. Now, the most important thing about any leadership contest is that we get the right leader for the right phase. Now, sadly, we're going to have the luxury of some time in opposition. That was the message we heard loud and clear from the British people. So we've got some thinking to do. We've got to reflect on the results. And, I would favour taking the right amount of time to do that. The price for a leadership contest is relatively modest in the context of getting the right leader for this important period of opposition.
Some of the candidates that have sort of been hinting that they're going to stand. I mean, I think in the last week we've had reports that Tom Tugendhat will stand. We've then had Steve Baker and Damien Green, the former Tories, support his candidacy. We've had hints that Priti Patel is going to stand. I think Suella Braverman has made it pretty clear that she's going to stand. We've also heard about James Cleverly. We've got Robert Jenrick with his new haircut and a little bit of weight loss suggesting that he might stand. Is this all just too soon? Because you don't seem to have worked out yet what quite went wrong and how on earth you're going to be even near being re-elected come 2029.
Well, that's the most important point to me, which is the time to reflect and really understand what it is that the British people were telling us. I think a large part of that was about the competency. It wasn't about necessarily them falling out of love with the idea of Conservatives that want to keep people's taxes low, allow them to keep more of what they earn, spend public money wisely. But there's clearly some messages that we have to take away from what was a very significant defeat that regrettably cost so many of my former colleagues their places in Parliament. So you are right. We need to learn those lessons and not rush too quickly, in my view, into an immediate selection contest about the answer. Ultimately, these are decisions for other people to take. The party board, the 92 committee will represent the views of members of Parliament such as myself.
But is your instinct, Mr Griffith, that maybe the leadership race should wait until after the Tory conference in the autumn? Is that your sense? It's just a couple of the grey hairs have said that to me. Ian Duncan-Smith currently being touted as a potential interim leader, David Davis. They're all saying, cool your jets, do not do anything on leadership until after the Tory conference.
Look, I suppose in that spectrum between short and long, I'm more of a longie. But look, this is in essence an internal leadership debate for us. Relatively small number of us MPs now. We can sort that out over the coming weeks and months. It's not for me ultimately to make those decisions. But there is that really important job, and I want to reassure your viewers that we're not taking our eye off holding this government already to account and holding them to account for their promises, particularly their promise not to put up taxes. Rachel Reeves is touring the studios, trying to roll the pitches, despite the fact she's inherited an economy which is one of the fastest in the G7, and all of the public finances, thanks to the OBR, are out there in plain sight.
All right. To be fair, Rachel Reeves wasn't touring this studio this morning. I'm not sure what she's afraid of, Mr Griffith. Some cold, hard questioning, perhaps.
Shame on the Labour Chancellor, and I'm always happy to come and talk to yourself and GBNews viewers.
Good man. Now, Suella Braverman, she's argued that the Conservatives risk becoming centrist cranks. Is she right? Are you a centrist crank, Mr Griffith? In fact, are these interventions even helpful to the Tory cause right now?
Look, I don't think that's the number one thing that the British people want to hear from the Conservatives. They delivered a very clear message. They gave us one of our worst ever defeats. And a lot of that, in my view, is as much about our conduct as our policies. I'm somebody who's a low tax, traditional Conservative, if you like, who believes in a small state while still providing a basic level of public services. And I want to see taxes, for example, reduced, not increased, as Labour are threatening to do. I want to protect our countryside, and we're not hearing anything in the King's speech this week about protecting, our countryside and what the government plans to do for rural affairs and farmers. Those are my values.
Part of the problem? Isn't that part of the problem, that the Tories talk a good game on low tax and low immigration and all the rest of it, but 4 million people voted for reform because you didn't honour your 2019 manifesto promises? Instead of tax coming down, it went up. Instead of immigration coming down, it went up. I mean, you've got to address that, haven't you?
Look, I think we have. And that's why I said, it's important that we take time and listen to those lessons. That's not something that you would expect to happen overnight, nor do I think it would be particularly credible if that happened within weeks rather than over months. That's a dialogue that we should be having. I'm not rising to the response to have that dialogue out here on the airwaves right now, because I think we should take some time to reflect. But to be clear, I don't think the rejection of the Conservatives was necessarily about our values and policies. A large part of that would have been about our conduct, and whether people trusted us to deliver things that they themselves still understand, supported. None of which we must. The wrong thing to do would be to go into a self-indulgent, dialogue via the media, via the airwaves, at a time when Parliament has now been reformed. Everybody's taken their oath of allegiance. We've had the King's speech. The Labour government that is going to do, in my view, things that are detracting from the future prosperity and success of this country, has got a record number of bills of legislation, and it's really important we don't take our eye off the ball.
But further thought on that, because I didn't mention her earlier when I was listing some of the potential Tory leadership candidates, Kemi Badenoch. I mean, she really held Angela Rayner's feet to the flames earlier on in the week in the House of Commons. She is a good attack dog for your party in opposition. Would you like her to be leader? And if not her, who? To finish, Mr Griffith.
Well, look, I think Kemi's demolition of Angela Rayner with those terrible policies that could see our green belt and countryside and green spaces more generally being built on in an unthinking way, not the right homes in the right places. That was a really good example of opposition. So you're not going to draw me successfully on any one individual candidate. We're very lucky as a Conservative Party to have a broad field. But that was a good example of good opposition, holding the government to account. There's more of that needs to be done. In a way, we are at a moment of maximum danger in that the Labour government's come on in. Yes, they've got a majority, but only for things that were clearly in their manifesto. And the biggest thing that they promised was that they wouldn't be putting up taxes. Now, over the coming weeks, we're going to get a statement from Rachel Reeves. In the autumn, we'll get a budget. It's really important they're held to account. They promise not to put up taxes on ordinary people. That must be what they are held to account to do.
OK. Andrew Griffith, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.